All right, everybody, welcome to episode number 3, and we have an official name now. It's called Dirt Race Central Talks 2, and this time we're talking to Mr. Danny Vang, the 47, one of, when I first started announcing, one of my absolute favorite drivers that I got to announce for, just to watch his smoothness and the precision of how he did it, and we'll talk about a couple of those things. So how are you doing, Dan?
We're doing good. Thanks for having me, Kyle.
Absolutely. I'm excited to have you. This is... You don't realize the effect that you have on people, Kenny, and I'm honestly one of your biggest fans. And so I love the way you drive. I love the way you represent yourself and your sponsors. And it's a pleasure to have you on this episode of this show. So,
well, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to get right into it. I've been, this is third episode, and I'm just trying different things. And we've always do a thing, Danny, called Danny Vang Trivia. It's not Danny Vang Trivia every single week. It's whoever I'm talking to trivia.
Yeah, you wouldn't be having many episodes if that was the case.
If it was Danny Vang Trivia every week, you'd be surprised, I bet you. And so we're going to start the trivia right off at the beginning here, and hopefully that leads to some other questions that we can talk about for the rest of the show here. So question number 1, in 2020, this is according to my race pass, how many shows did Danny Vang have?
I'm going to say 28.
28 is pretty dang close. 26 shows.
Okay.
According to my race pass. Now, there might have been some outlaw racing where they don't have my race pass there, and so you're probably right. But according to my race pass, it's 26. Okay. So in those 26 races, 2 times you went to the top of the box, and you won 2 times in 2020, according to my race pass. Where were those wins? What tracks did you win at in 2020?
The first one would have been Superior, Gondik Law Speedway, and then Bemidji Speedway.
And Bemidji.
After Stampede, yep.
That's exactly right. So, this is not a question, Danny, but you, of your 26 races, 50% of the time you were in the top 10. So that's I think a very impressive stat in the modified class that you run, that you're consistently a top 5-10 guy week in and week out. So it's the reason you're always right there at the end of the points championships too.
Yeah, I mean, that's really the goal is to make sure we try and finish every race, and really top 5s every night is our main goal, besides second to winning, of course.
Right, exactly.
And then having something to load up at the end of the night. But
exactly.
Yeah, so this year was a little bit challenging. A lot of the tracks we ran at, Superior, they had great car counts all year, with some of the other tracks being shut down. So there was never a lack of competition really anywhere you went. So.
Yeah, for sure not. Nope. I made it up there a couple times, and it was it's a fun track, at least to spectate at. I would imagine it's a fun track to drive at as well.
Yeah, for sure. No, it's another great facility up in that area with Proctor up there, and they've just been continually making improvements, and it's really been a fun place to kind of settle into the last few years.
Yeah, that's awesome. You become that's sort of become the hometown track, which it breaks my heart, but it is what it is. It is what it is. So, okay, last question, and this one is completely, I mean, I think there is a right answer. I just don't know what it is. And one of the guys that you work with gave me this question today. You'll figure out who that is. He wants to know, when did we switch from the iconic blue and white number 47 to the all red 47?
So that was 3 years ago.
3 years ago.
We switched over. Yep. So one of the things, the blue and white is still probably one of my favorite paint schemes we've had.
For sure.
I've enjoyed the red, and I'm sure we'll make a return to that again someday.
A retro day.
Yeah, for sure. So how the red come apart, I believe one of my dad's last cars was red. And then Kiwi Brothers Trucking, which has been one of our great sponsors the last few years, all of their trucks are red. So we kind of did a throwback to their era, and the first car we did if you looked on the roof, there's a whole collage of pictures from all their different trucks and stuff they had.
Oh, very cool. I love
turned
those.
out pretty neat. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a guy at Butch Butcher, who I'm sure you know. His whole car a number of years ago, like every inch of the tin was a collage. It was like you had to get up close to see even what it was. From a long ways away, it kind of looked camouflagey or something. But I love those kinds of things like that, where there's a meaning to the wrap versus just some stickers kind of thing. So love that. So, well, very cool. It's I'm going to kind of lead off of that last question. Your cars, and I need to preface this by you're an engineer. Like that's your real job, is you're an engineer. And so in your mind, you know, a 1/16 of an inch might as well be 2 miles off, I think, because you're in the occasions where I've been able to get up close to your car, where the roll bar goes through the tin on the deck. Like you could put a feeler gauge around that, Danny, and it would be perfect. Like your cars are so precise, and it's not uncommon to come see you in the pits before a race, and you've got the tin off, and you're cleaning off the rubber mark from last night, kind of thing. And so is that just an engine? Do you have to do that, or is that just I wanted things to look good?
Well, so the actual tin around the roll bar, I have to thank my good friend Dale Johnson, because he's a machinist, and he takes pride in that particular part. So, but it kind of carries throughout the whole car. I mean, the competition is so good. You have to have everything the best you can, and the investment you have into it. You know, we're at such a short season, you want to make the most of it. So
sure,
that's a good part of it. And then the other thing is, you know, I'd love to replace the body even more than we do now, but you know, there's a lot of people that invested into us, sponsors and people that come to see, and you want to show that, you know, you're putting in some good effort for them. So.
Absolutely. And it shows. It's exactly kind of how we started out the show, Danny, is your car is never sort of half-assed. It's always perfect. And it shows in your driving style too, is buttery smooth, and it's clear that you're not, you know, that whole 8 tires turns better than 4 into turn 1 kind of thing. It just doesn't happen with you. And so I take that back. I've seen that happen maybe once or twice, but maybe somebody owed it.
Yeah. It probably all is come around both ways. So
exactly.
For the most part, we all want to finish. So
yeah, that's the thing. And especially, I make the point to people all the time, if you watch, not to dog on one class or another, but if you watch the sort of more expensive classes, the modifieds, the late models, not that any of them are cheap, but if you watch those guys run, yourself included, there's not a lot of heavy beating and banging. You might rub somebody down the backstretch or move them over a little bit or something like that, but there's no like slamming into each other, because everything's expensive on your car, and on the other guy's car it's expensive.
Yeah, I think for the most part, there's a lot of people that really try and race clean. I mean, you're going to get their fenders rubbed and stuff
sure.
in a while. And then every once in a while, you'll see something that was intentional. That was pretty blatant, but
accidentally intentional.
Yeah. But, you know, for the most part, I think it's pretty decent out there.
That's cool. So, so another thing that I always notice about Danny Vang is, and maybe this is something you don't even realize that you do, but maybe it's 100% on purpose too. And maybe I'm letting secrets out that I shouldn't be, but when Danny Vang rolls over the hill and onto the track, you're at a pace lap pace for as long as it takes to get lined up. Whereas a lot of guys come out and they're rocking the car back and forth, and they're spinning the tires, or they'll burn around 1 and 2 and then slow down. Is that intentional? Or is that? See, I'm letting secrets out now, aren't I?
It's probably subconscious to a certain extent. So back to my friend Dale, he used to race sprint cars back in the 90s, early 2000s, and he that's what he did. I mean, you never seen him, you know, beating on the motor, you know, beating on the car, and I learned early on, especially at Brainerd, when we started racing more, just taking care of the tires and everything else. When everybody's doing all this work on the tires, siping and grinding, and then you go out there and you start trying to heat them up, and you're spinning them, and
you're burning off everything you just did.
And not even the tires, it's the motors and everything, how much money you have into them. And we've gotten to the point where the last 3-4 years I built a heater to heat the motor before it goes out there, so when we start it, we're not starting a cold motor. It's as warm as I can get it when I get on the track, and you're just trying to let everything warm up before you basically go and
before you hammer
test everything.
So, yep. No, that's
I guess I didn't really consciously do that, but now that you say that, I guess I can see where you say that.
It is without fail, that's what you do when you come on the track. It is like you go to the high, you're almost always on the high side, like getting out of everyone's way. Like I would imagine, tightening the belts a little bit, getting the helmet. If you're like, when I drive, I fidget like right up until I take the green flag. Like I am like trying to get comfortable in the seat, because you're just, I don't know, you're just goofy in the seat kind of a thing. But you're calm, cool, and collected, man. Like the first time that engine hears the loud pedal is when it goes green, kind of thing. So it's just, I've always wondered that. Like we sit in the grandstands and I speculate, is he doing that on purpose, or is that just a thing that he does, kind of thing? So, but it's a little of both, maybe, it sounds like.
Yeah. So
yeah. Okay, so you're pretty famously a blue oval guy. Where does that come from?
So, we never really grew up a Ford family by any means. And when we first started in the B mods, we were always Chevrolet stuff. And, back then, Troy Jordan was running Fords in the B mods, and he ran well. Ebert was in the Fords. And basically we had dabbled with the A mod for a couple of years. Mark Anderson had given us the opportunity to get a motor from him. So we ran pretty limited shows for a couple of years, and then just with what we had going on in life, we went back to a B mod. And Larry Condon from Brainerd, he had a motor for sale and pretty much ready to go. So at that time, it was a clean sheet for us to start over. So that's how we got into the Fords and the B mods, and it was a good package. And actually, we still have one motor left from the B mod that Dad's running his vintage car up.
I was going to say, is that in the vintage car?
And it still runs good. It just won't die. So we've got heads from 2 different motors that have blown up on it, and it's used everything. And that was the motor we ran the last 2 years.
It works. It works
for sure.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. So like, I've always kind of wondered if there's I love hearing the history behind things like that. So you brought up a couple names, and the first thing you said is we weren't always a Ford family kind of thing. There's your family, maybe more than any other family that I notice anyways. It's not, everyone expects Ann, your wife, to be there with the girls maybe, but it's not like your brother's there, your mom's there, your dad's there. Every race, it seems like, kind of a thing. And so, which is awesome. Like, I love going and sitting next to your mom and dad and your wife in this grandstands, because they've all got receivers in there. It's like race time. We're working, damn it.
Yeah, no, I mean, and it's been that way since '93 when we started in the go-karts. And, my aunt and uncle with Godfrey Plumbing and Heating, they come every chance they can. And they were like that when we were racing go-karts, and it's really been a blessing. I mean, without, Ann's support and mom and dad's and Brian's and all that, I mean, we couldn't have done what we've done in the last 10 years even. So,
yep. Like it's a lot of times the thing that racing is the reason everybody goes to the track initially, I think, probably, but I think a lot of the reason people keep going back to the track is it's not only your biological family, like the people are become your family, and it's you see the same people every damn week, and in your cases 3-4 nights a week, for 30 weeks a year, kind of a thing. And so it is a lot of fun, I think, that way.
I think the cool thing is yeah, I mean, we've got to meet so many people, and it's the friendships you develop. And one of the neat things is maybe from October to April, you won't talk to 90% of them, and yet the next time you see them, it's like you seen them yesterday. So,
yep. I mean, yeah, it's like the conversation just starts up from 7 months ago, kind of thing.
Yeah. So
I agree.
So what were we talking about? Yeah,
exactly. So speaking of family, like yours, like you met Ann at the racetrack, did you not?
Yep. So I worked down in El Rosa at a body shop for one summer, and once in a while I'd go down to. That was the only summer since 1993 that I didn't race something. And I went down to Wilmer, and Ann and her grandpa used to ride with Mark Anderson when he was racing B-Mods back then. And that's where I met her. And then probably 3-4 years later, we started dating, and the rest is about history.
Nice. Yeah. So, well, it's if you're going to be a stock car driver, you better pick a girl from the stock car track, because then, hey, stock cars were first, honey.
Yeah. No, she's probably probably a little bit bigger race fan than I am even. I mean, she's probably gone to more races, especially when she was young, they were going 4 nights a week, and, we were going 1 or 2. So, yeah, I mean, that's been a true blessing.
Yeah, no, I agree. She's pretty awesome. So, so now you mentioned go-karts. Is that how you started racing, is go-karts, or did you race bicycles first or anything like that?
I raced BMX a little bit, but we got into, so the story of how we got in. So Dad raced, back in the early 70s, and then
we talked about that car. We talked about that car over your right-hand shoulder there.
Yep, just up over there. Yep. Yeah. So it must have been 92. We went to the state fair, and my brother and I were not into, amusement rides and stuff. So we actually ended up leaving early from the state fair and driving up to Alexandria to watch the races. And we'd seen a sign for the go-karts. Well, Dad went down in the pits afterwards and talked to a couple guys, and that winter we bought a couple go-karts, and we had some homemade stuff that Dad had made, and we had a little track behind the house.
Sure.
But yeah, that's kind of when it all really took off, and it's kind of been an addict ever since.
You got bit by the bug, man.
Yeah, for sure.
It's hard to not be around it, for sure. So I noticed on the vintage car, Dad is number 47 as well, right?
So he's 44.
44, okay.
Yep.
And so where's 47 come from?
So when Dad raced, him and his buddy Doug Lasher, they had a car together. So they added their ages together, and that's how they come to 44. So in the go-karts, I was actually number 11. And back then you had a list of numbers you could pick from, because they didn't let 2 carts have the same numbers. So
really? Okay.
Yep. So, and I don't remember how I got to draw first, but I chose 11 for Steve Kenzer, and then nice. Brian was 25. So then when we kind of got back into, or out of the go-karts fully in our first D-Mod, Brian and I actually shared the car for the first couple of years. So at the time we added our ages together, and that's how we got 47. And
nice.
It's kind of just stuck for me since.
Yeah. That's a cool, I love those stories. I love that. And so how did Brian stop driving then?
So he was trucking at the time, and it just got to the point where, he was always on the road, and he did a pretty good job of making it back just about for every weekend. But it just got to the point with what he had going on, and then he'd always feel bad because if something happened, so he ran Princeton mainly, and I ran Brainerd, then he'd feel bad if it got wrecked up and we had to spend all day Saturday, trying to get it back together. So so that's kind of how he faded out. But last couple of years he's been, basically he shows up to the vintage cars, and usually somebody's got a ride for him. So we're actually building a car for him right now, or he's building it. So
a vintage one or a regular car?
Yeah. Yep. Vintage car. So
cool. So father and son get to race each other in the vintage class?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, that'll be awesome. That'll be awesome. The vintage stuff is I always love the look of the car. Like those are just beautiful cars, like from when I was a kid, a lot of them kind of thing. I don't get the like you can't win the feature and the like it's against the rules to win back. You can't get a clean sweep kind of thing. It's
Yeah,
weird.
I think they have a little fine or something for them, but
Yeah, they do.
I actually ran Dad's vintage car at Brainerd a few years ago, and I will assure you that they are not just putting around. I mean, them guys are actually getting after it pretty good.
No,
so.
for sure. They look damn near impossible to drive.
Yeah, so Dad and Brian, they're kind of in the super modified class, and a majority of them are actually based off of sprint cars and stretched out and kind of
Harry the Horse Thief Johnson sprint cars, I like to call them.
Yep. So they're stretched a little bit, but so I'm assuming they're probably a lot like driving a wingless sprint car nowadays.
They seem sketchy, to say the least. Like they're just twitchy.
Yeah.
But awesome. And so how old, like you kind of told us the number, how old were you when go-kart started? Were you like a kid or were you a teenager?
No, so I would have been just turned 11 or 12, I believe, when I think I was 11 then, and just turned 12 when the season started. So so that we raced go-karts in Alexandria every weekend. And then when you were 16 there, you couldn't that was their age limit at the time. Yeah.
Sure.
So then there was a couple other go-kart tracks, one down by Hutchinson and one in Atwater down by Wilmer. So I went down there every week, and then in 2003, that's when we really got into
cars,
the B mods, I guess. Yeah.
Yep. And so you never, like, the B mods was your first car class. You never did a Hornet or any, like, it's B mods or nothing.
Yeah, that's where we started. So
start right there at the middle. Yeah.
So,
but clearly it's worked for you. I'm like, as we're talking about B mods, there was I remember a race, I was announcing it. You had your left front went flat, maybe lap 2 or 3. There was an accident. You got into it, or maybe you
I hit the grader tire.
Yeah. And so like left front is literally flopping off the car. And you might have won, you might have passed 2 or 3 cars and won the race with literally no left front, which is impressive, but there was cautions.
I remember
that like it was like I couldn't believe that was happening. So
so
you'd be allowed to do that today because they'd kick you off the track with that flop.
Well, and actually at that time, I think it was like the second or third lap, and I went to the bottom and I hit the grader tire, and usually, sometimes when you're out there, you just know that okay, the car's pretty good tonight, and it was one of those nights, but clearly I must have been a little bit too impatient. And so it broke the tie rod, but the tire stayed up. So it was just pinned at 90 degrees. And when I was in the corner, you could get the tire to lift off the ground just enough that it would corner fine. And then on the straightaway, you could just feel the motor just laboring down the straightaways. But so the problem was the cautions. And I did my best from going from the outside wall to the infield to make the turn again. But, Sean probably remembers, but I used Sean Fletcher's door.
That's who it was. Sean kept you straight on the straightaways during cautions. Yeah.
So, and I can only imagine what I would have said if somebody did that to me. But he was a pretty good sport about it. I think he was actually laughing afterwards. And,
Sean's a good sport about a lot of stuff like that. So I remember that like it was, because I was going to say somebody was keeping you straight, but it was Sean Fletcher. That's exactly who it was. Yep. Good times, man. So, okay. So a more serious question, and then maybe two written down questions left, and then we can chat about whatever you want after that. So it seems like there's maybe a resurgence of dirt track racing going on nationally. Like there's Bristol dirt this year. NASCAR's been racing at Eldora for a couple years. They're going to Knoxville this year. There just seems to be a lot more publicity, and dirt track seems to be gaining a little bit of popularity. So in our area, what do you think is one or two things that tracks, drivers, even spectators can do to kind of keep that bringing in new drivers, keeping spectator counts high, and that sort of stuff. What is some of the things that, as a pretty smart guy and a guy that's been around racing forever and ever, what do you think some things that could be done?
So, I think on a national level, we've seen so much of it just because we've seen a lot of the, NASCAR guys retiring, getting into the dirt stuff. And
yeah,
it shows because there's a tremendous amount of technology that's come from their expertise as they get into it. And it's trickled down to here. But, as far as, keeping fans, I mean, I think there's a generation of people that, like the baby boomers and stuff that grew up with it when went through its heydays and different cycles, and it's the biggest thing is probably just getting the youth involved in, and one of the things I think that you've done a great job and you can, help out with this is just, I remember, like when we go to Alexandria and Keith did it at Brainerd, is just when you showed up and you heard all the stories about how the different teams did at different tracks, and it just kind of, personalizes, the fans with the drivers more. As far as getting new people in, I mean, I think, the go-karts, Ogilvy's got a track now.
Yeah, they do. Yep.
Our youngest daughter.
I think Alex still has one too.
Yep. So, I mean, I think that's also a good a resource for drawing in and, just, events to get people to the tracks, different things and just about getting the people in the stands and keeping them entertained.
No, I would agree with that. And then, so Ryan Aho was the very first episode of this that we ever did, and he's got a passion of he wants to help and make things grow and that sort of stuff. And his answer was pretty similar about there's 2,500, 3,000 people that are going to go to Proctor Speedway or Superior or Brainerd or Ogilvy or the best track in the country, in the whole damn world, as far as I'm concerned, Granite City Motor Park. Really great announcer there. They said. It's going to be the core, 2,500, 3,000 people are going to go every night. And we tend to cater to those 3,000 people that are going to come no matter what. And Ryan's point is always, there's 80,000 other people that live within 50 miles of this place or 100 miles of this place. Let's get some of them coming to the track and figuring out ways to expand that fan base, because then, there's not a spectator in the world that doesn't look down on that track and go, I can do that. Now they can't, but some of them can, kind of thing. And so it's, I agree with you, Dan. It's, if we can get more youth, more, not even youth, some 20-year-olds, some 30-year-olds in there to become race fans that aren't race fans, maybe down the road, like, hey, let's throw a car together for my son or whatever it is, kind of a thing. So,
and I think you've seen that, love them or hate them, the Hornets have really grown, and it's brought a lot of new people into it. And, some of them people might do it for a few years and get out, but when, they get to a different spot in their life, it's a good chance that they might come back to it. So, I mean,
absolutely. Or step up. There's a lot of guys. I think of Alex Dostal, who is a guy, I think 2 years ago was in a Hornet and moved in the IMCA side, moved from Hornet all the way to stock car, which is, I mean, that's kind of the premier class in IMCA. And that's a huge leap. And he did great on both sides. And so it's the feeder classes, the smaller classes will build the bigger classes as well. So
for sure,
that's awesome.
And I think another thing a lot of the tracks have done a good job is just doing more of the meet the drivers, at least, or kids nights and stuff like that, and give the the fans a chance to get down and see some of the cars,
see somebody up close,
and So
yeah, I think about when I was a kid. Racing was obviously very, very different back then, but I remember my racing hero was a guy named Wally Moss. I don't know if you know Wally or not, but still around, was the 3A, had a Camaro. This would have been 1978, 1979, 80, somewhere right in there kind of a thing. I was a little guy. And he, after the races in Brainerd, he would put me in the passenger side of his race car, and I would hold on to the door, and I'd hold on to the down bar of the roll bars, and we'd go make 3 laps after the race. And I'm just standing in the car, like it couldn't. My mom is a horrible mom, apparently, but today that's a felony today. But
Yeah.
It's what cemented racing into my head. And I think, like you're talking about on kids' night, to lift up that 6-year-old or that 7-year-old and let them sit in your seat for 10 seconds and take a picture. That's the coolest thing in the world, like the cockpit of a stock car. Still at not 8 years old anymore, the cockpit of a stock car is the coolest place in the whole world to be. And so.
No, for sure. I mean, it's that's same for me. When I was a little kid and we used to go to Dale's shop, and he'd always ask, "Hey, you want to sit in the sprint car?" And I mean, it just, to this day, you still remember it.
Absolutely.
When you're that young, it's an impressionable thing.
Absolutely. And I think the more drivers like yourself that kind of take that step to do that, it's important. So, okay. Anything else that you want to talk about, Dan?
I mean, probably the biggest thing is I just want to thank my wife and 2 daughters, Lily and Olivia, and like mom and dad and my brother Brian, and just all the people we've met. The last few years we've had phenomenal sponsors, and the cool thing about the sponsors we have, and I'll list them in a minute, but really honestly today, if they called up and said, "Hey, we're not going to sponsor cars anymore," I truly feel that our friendship would be just the same as it is right now. I mean, it's more of a family than a sponsor
than a business.
Yeah, exactly. So,
That's
speaking
cool.
of sponsors, we got KME, Pat Capella up in Keewatin up by Hibbing. He's come on board last year, and he's been a huge help. We actually, so last year we ran a crate motor from him. And so that was a little bit of an experience. It ran better than I thought. I think there's definitely a place for it, but the package isn't quite there for the tracks that we run at.
You're running.
To make it, Kiwi Trucking, Kiwi Brothers, they've been a huge support the last few years. Dear True Value, of course, Brian's has the store now, and they've, helped from the beginning, and countless thousands.
That's your best sponsor because he literally builds the engines. Yeah.
So, my buddy Josh Schiffler from Canyon Lakes, Park City in Crosby, he's been a huge help with filters and that kind of stuff. Godfrey Plumbing and Heating, like I said, Ed and Mount Sherry, they've gone to the races literally since we were kids, and been a huge support. Gene Palmy Trucking, up out of Duluth, and Roth RV right in Deerwood here. They've been a help the last few years too. So
nice. It takes a village, man. That's for sure. So
go ahead.
You brought up your girls. Are they gonna get to hold the wheel anytime soon, or are they in karts now?
So Olivia, she just turned 7 in September. She's running karts now. So we've been doing Thursdays at Ogilvie
in Ogilvie,
last couple summers. Yep. Lily, she doesn't. I've offered several times, but she's the older one. She doesn't seem to have too much of an interest at the moment. So
that's all right.
Which is fine, but
cheaper for dad.
Yeah, for sure. So
awesome. Okay, so last question is, and you're the first person to get to do this, and so you get to set the bar here. We're gonna do a pay it forward question to the next guest, and I'll tell you who it is. It's Justin Pagonis.
Okay.
Who I think you know, Pogo. He's going to be the next guest. He's going back to street stocks this year. He's been a Mod 4 guy for the last 4 or 5 years. Going back to street stocks this year, and so I need your question to Justin Pagonis for the next show.
So I've heard this a lot from there around
they're always talking about winner chicken dinner. So what's the best chicken recipe you have?
That's a perfect question for them. What is the best chicken recipe? I'll tell you a secret, and this will be in next week's show as well. I was the announcer, Danny. You know who I am. I was the announcer for 5 or 6 years. On the side of his car, it said Pogo's Chicken. I thought that they owned a restaurant, and his specialty was chicken. I thought that's what it was, and it was. I mean, it was like years before I go down in the pits, and he's making chicken because he always is, and I'm like, so is this from the restaurant? He's like, what restaurant? And I'm like, well, you own a restaurant. And he's like, I don't own a restaurant. And it was like, I was like, couldn't get my foot further into my mouth that night, but it was pretty funny. So
yeah, it happens.
It does. Well, and if you talk long enough, you, as you and I well know, Danny, misunderstandings will happen from time to time on a microphone. Yep. So it's, I appreciate it, Danny. Thank you so much for coming and doing this, and best of luck in 2021. I hope that it is a full 60 show season for everybody, and that we just get to go race and have fun. And I hope to see you in St. Cloud more often than not on Sunday nights, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll make it down there a number of times. So
yeah.
Again, congrats on the new announcing job there.
Yeah,
so
I'm excited about
exciting.
it.
Yeah,
I'm excited about it. Just, I don't know when this episode's going to show, but about an hour ago, James Trantina, who's the owner of Granite City Motor Park, did a 15-minute live, like all the improvements that they've made to the track. And I couldn't be more excited about the cool stuff that are happening at that track right now. So
no, it should be fun to see.
It's going to be fun. So thanks again, Danny. If any questions or anything like that, you give me a call, and I'm going to do the same to you. Good luck in 2021.
Sounds good. Thanks again for having me.
You bet, man. Have a great day.